So next up, she can share the story about how we actually first met, but it was some time ago, and it's incredible to see the journey that Brigid Fox, who is a revenue leader, a multilingual sales leader, who is going to be talking about rethinking success as a revenue leader. Now, she's had a fantastic and early successful career at data businesses like MuleSoft and Databricks, where she started right from the beginning as an SDR, making her way through to AE and then building regional enterprise sales teams. So she's had that proven success in hyper-growth SaaS businesses, but since 2020, she's been responsible for advising and consulting early-stage founders at seed to Series A, taking that transition from founder-led sales to building out a go-to-market team and having a fully-fledged sales function. She's also an advisor to a number of companies across the fintech and online space. So can we have a round of applause for Brigid, please?
Thank you. All right, there's nothing like having your first speaking slot since the pandemic in front of 250 sales leaders, so go easy. I also don't have any presentation slides, so I'm just going to play with my hands and things. But so James has actually stolen a bit of my thunder there, because I met James back in 2013, and so when we were preparing for this session, when I was talking to James, I was kind of filling him in on the moves that I'd made since MuleSoft, which is when we first met. And James kind of asked me this question. He was like, Brigid, you spent your first 7 years of your career at these kind of poster child high growth companies, right? Where you had world-class leadership, world-class products, that hockey stick growth that everybody just aspires to. Why, oh why have you gone into this horrible, murky, risky space of seed stage businesses? It doesn't make sense, right? But I think inherent in that question was this assumption of what success looks like as a sales leader, right? And successful trajectories as sales leaders look like growing revenue at an astronomical rate and getting promoted year on year, effectively growth. And that made me realize just how much my own notion of success has changed in the past 2 to 3 years, and that's what I wanted to share a little bit about today. So maybe a bit of context would be helpful. So as James said, I spent some time at MuleSoft and Databricks, and the measure of success there is revenue, right? The model was growth at all costs. That's a model which I think all of us in this room probably grew up with professionally. It's kind of a model for a different economic time now. But in that model, you are all about the revenue number, right? That is what investors want, that is what the market wants, and so that is what we did. I was defined by my number, and the business was defined as successful when it exceeded its revenue numbers too. But I think what became really, really clear after a few years of working in those environments was that that growth at all costs model has its downsides. Some of them are financial, and we're starting to see that play out in the bear markets. We're seeing companies that grew really fast without a sustainable revenue base now paring back and unfortunately making layoffs, seeing valuations completely stripped. I think there's an ecological cost which we're more aware of than ever, thankfully, and I look back in shame when I think about the international flights that I jumped on to do calls and meetings with customers, which I now do in pajamas in my living room on Zoom. But I think the most important and kind of painful impact and cost of that growth at all costs model was on people, right? And that is something that I felt personally. I was all about the number. I exceeded my number outwardly, was extremely successful, right? I was traveling the world, I was exceeding my quota, I was buying the house, I was getting the commission checks. But I have never been less connected to my community, to my family, to my friends, and to my sense of purpose. And unfortunately, that came to a head in 2019 when I was signed off with burnout. And I've subsequently made the decision that that was not a sustainable life for me. I left my position. In that moment, I have never felt more like a failure, because everything we're supposed to want as sales leaders is that trajectory, right? I walked away from that trajectory, and many people in my life, in my world, asked me what I was going to do next, because that was meant to be the pinnacle. So for a long time, I thought that sales leadership and having a connection to purpose and sustainability were just a dichotomy. Like, it just wasn't possible to do both. And so I took some time off. I took 8 months off. I slept a ton. I got a dog. I trained my dog. He's still not that well trained. And I actually started studying an MBA. And the MBA had a focus on climate change and business strategy, so how we could evolve business in the face of climate change. And my goal there was not to come back into sales, but to think about taking a different path that was more aligned maybe with my sense of meaning and purpose and my values. But in this MBA, I came across a different way of measuring and thinking about success in business, right? And it was called the triple bottom line. Hands up if you've heard of the triple bottom line. Okay, not too many. So triple bottom line boils down to 3 Ps. People, planet, and profit, in that order. And there's a ton of research out there, and all of it points to the fact that businesses that actually focus on people and on planet first drive better financial results than the companies that focus just on profit. All right, and we're seeing that more and more play out in the business world today. So this was just amazing for me because it was contrary to everything that I'd grown up with. It was contrary to everything that I had ever worked with before. And I decided from that moment that that would be my mantra for success, right? I would focus on people and planet first, and I would hope that that means that profit would follow in a more sustainable way. And although I wasn't intending to come back into sales, I suddenly realized actually, if businesses are more financially profitable, if they're actually more successful by focusing on people and planet, then it has to be that sales teams would be too. And so fast forward a few years, I'm actually the VP of revenue for a seed stage data and AI company. And this comes back to the question that I kind of posed at the beginning, which is, why early stage? And early stage really because when you have none of the foundations and the baggage of how you measure success, when you can start from scratch and kind of choose to build and measure differently, you can really experiment, you can really try to build something in a different way. And so at Aferis, we are early stage, we're growing fast, and we are building differently. And concretely what that means is we focus on the 3 Ps. So across planet, we do lots of things. One of them is not giving away swag at events like at Big Data today that's just going to go straight to landfill. But that's pretty surface. I think maybe what people in this room might be more interested in is we've decided as an early stage business that even though our platform could be used in pretty much any industry and use case, we are focusing solely on impact use cases with businesses that will drive some kind of positive impact on society or the environment. What might be less obvious is that we're also saying no to things, right? And trust me when I say having a conversation with a CEO when you're pre-revenue about actively turning down projects that don't align with your values is not the easiest thing to do, but to his credit, he went with it. So if Shell come asking us to help them optimize their drilling process for oil, we're an impact-driven company that cares about climate and sustainability, we will say no, even if it's revenue, right? So that's planet, but that's also had a huge and positive impact on people. Now, there's a statistic that came out from a McKinsey report, I think a couple of weeks back, that said that 70% of people get their personal sense of meaning and purpose from the work that they do, and that if they feel that connection in their work, they're half as likely to leave their jobs. By having a mission focus and by really living out those values, we've actually been able to recruit really top-tier talent to Aferis, even though we're seed stage, right? We don't have the branding of MuleSoft and Databricks, but we have some fantastic leaders and individual contributors who've joined us because they feel that we're doing something seriously different. And on the work sustainability side of things, we are doing everything as leaders to model a different working culture. I personally work 4 days a week, and I have never been more productive. We encourage flexibility around working when it suits people, and so that they can integrate the rest of their lives into their working practices. And a lot of people probably sat there going, yeah, you've talked about people, and you've talked about planet, but are you actually selling anything? Because this is a sales event, right? It sounds a bit kumbaya. But what I will say is that the profit aspect has absolutely come along with us. So we are an early stage business, but within 9 months of launching our product in December, we actually reached 1 million in ARR from a standing start, right? 0. That is working with top tier pharma companies, top tier manufacturing companies, and just a handful of other global companies working in the data space. So profit is absolutely coming, and I am sure that as a company, as we grow, it's going to get harder to hold on to those values. But I am really motivated by the fact that as a sales leader, I can be defined by my impact way beyond a revenue number, and that actually in this climate, it makes more sense to focus on impact on planet and people than being single-mindedly focused on a number. So I hope you can take some value from that and keep me honest as we go through the next few years, because again, it's harder when you're scaling. But I wanted to share that with you and hope that you've taken something from that. So thank you.